as far as how we want to spend the next hour, I will give at least some introduction to some of the things that I'm doing, but if I don't get through the 15 or 20 minutes, you have a question in the middle, by all means, just kind of jump in and we'll take things as they go. I actually teach anatomy and physiology at Northern Kentucky University. It's an enrollment of about 15,000 students. I coordinate both the Anatomy and Physiology 1 and the Anatomy and Physiology course, 2 courses. As far as what I'm doing right now, we teach those 2 courses in the summer, so I'm right in the middle of a 5-week session for Anatomy and Physiology 2 using visible body, and then I'm coordinating all the courses for that A&P 1 and 2 as they go into sections in fall. At least in this particular fall, we'll have 15 sections of Anatomy and Phys 1, 5 sections of Anatomy and Phys 2. At least when I got up this morning and found out that we did hire our last instructor and now my schedule is completely filled and I have faculty for all my courses, that actually made me happy. The fact that now I have to get a hold of that person and make sure they're ready to go in about 2.5 weeks is a whole nother thing. But what I wanted to do is kind of move in kind of a convoluted direction. I want to show you a copy of the Canvas site that my students are currently using during the A&P course number 2. And all I've done in Canvas is actually put a small icon and made a link to visible body. When I was working with Carly, she suggested that, well, if we can make this link go directly into the calendar, then students will be able to see exactly what they have due on which days. So that has worked out pretty well for the students because I'm working with a myriad of textbooks, so I am using My Lab and Mastering. I'm heavily using visible body. So typically students would have to look at several different websites to get the assignments that I'm asking them to do. But putting this into Canvas really worked out well. I'm going to kind of switch from that and move over to the course that I'm just about finished developing. And in this particular case, I did the same thing. I made a visible body icon and then put all of the assignments into the calendar. At least how I'm working this for a multi-section course, I put all of these assignments due on Monday evening at 11:59. Courses, at least for A&P 1, begin at 8 o'clock on Tuesday. There's one at 8, 10, 12, 2, and then I think one at 5:30. So they run through almost the remainder of the week after we prep it on Monday. So as far as for other faculty, I've put all of these assignments due on Monday evening at 11:59, and then I plan on sending this particular setup to each of the faculty members that are teaching that course, and then they can easily move these assignments to the evening before they have lab. So students are really forced to get in, do the work, make sure they're prepared when they get to lab each day.
Hey, Robert, sorry to interrupt. Can you share your screen?
Yep.
Thank you.
Is it up?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
All right. So let me just go back one frame and make sure that we're in that realm of how we're getting this done. So I move back. This is the Anatomy and Phys 1 lab. So it has an icon for visible body. And if I click on that, it takes us to the calendar I was discussing and gives everyone an idea of when assignments are due and when they have to get in. So pretty easy to move these assignments from the Monday evening where I've put them for all sections to any other day of the week. So individual faculty member can get in and make sure that they move those to the days that are best for them. If we look at how I really set up the course, let's take a look at how I set up the assignments. All I've really done here is kind of adjusted the assignments a little bit for the lab manual that we use. The lab manual is actually written by members of our department, but for the most part, it follows along with a typical Anatomy and Phys course. So if I open up, let's say, let's do one that has a little bit more information to it. I think this one works well. So for the tissues 2 and the integumentary system, what I've done is taken all of the things that I think students need to get done as far as pre-lab work and made them do the night before that particular lab goes off or is taught. And then just before they come in for the next week, while they'll be covering other information, they will have a quiz over the information from the week before. So you can see for the practice quizzes and the graded quizzes, I have them do that. They will take those things the night before, they'll come in the next day, and they then take a quiz over that particular information. As far as looking at individual things, let's kind of back up into the course that I'm working on now and look at least an example of what I've been doing. So if I go to an information set, each of these icons then go to a group of information. Here's what I asked them to do for that particular chapter. Here's some of the materials that we usually cover actually in lab, but in this case, we're doing it as part of a video. So this is actually recorded in Kaltura. And at least the beginning of this goes into the idea of oral glucose tolerance tests. And I collect data and begin to put that data in that chart. But really, I want to kind of move forward to right about here, I guess, maybe back a little bit. After I introduce that information, I then move into the information in the visible body platform. So we'll move away from collecting data for the oral glucose tolerance test and then into, I'm off by just a little bit. So this is the information from the endocrine system. So I pull this up and I
pituitary gland
annotate over top of it.
We're going to take a look at it in a little bit more detail. So let's move this to a sideways.
So I'm going to get rid of the audio so we can actually see how I'm going about identifying these structures. In general, let me move this out of the way so I can see it as well. In general, I'll highlight a couple structures. Like I will highlight the pons here to kind of get them orientated to the structures that they've covered in previous labs. So I'll highlight the idea of the pons, back here, the cerebellum, and then begin to move into those structures that are specific to the endocrine system on that day. Each time I click on a structure, it comes up here on the upper right-hand corner. So once I get them orientated, take a look at the pons, medulla oblongata, then I move into this material here in the center as far as looking at the hypothalamus, the infundibulum, and the individual lobes of the pituitary gland. Same type of thing as I go through this. As I highlight, it's going to tell them exactly what those structures are. I make reference to them as I go through, and then proceed from one structure to the next. Any type of structures on there that I think may be confusing to them at all, it's pretty easy just to jump into the hide function and move those things out of the way or hide them. So at least for that point in time, they can't be seen, and we can get to a point that they're looking at really only those structures that are appropriate to that particular lab. So we looked at the posterior and the anterior pituitary, and then this structure here actually is the optic chiasma. Just move that out of the way so they can clearly and easily see the outline of the hypothalamus and then the infundibulum that comes down through. Questions on that? Okay. Let's move this down. And then move over to that other course and give you an idea of how I'm going about that particular set of things. So in fall, I've extended this a little bit, and looking at visible body, there are two different ways that they can get in. We've already looked at the view that they can get in the calendar and look at things as they're due on any particular day. But within the scope of the course itself, if we look at, let's look at tissues 2. For each of those labs, when they begin to look at that information, I have a page that goes through and covers the idea of these are the kinds of things that I want you to complete before you come into lab. And in this particular case, they're going to cover muscle tissue, nervous tissue, and then a small amount of information on the integumentary system. So if you just put a quick hyperlink in and set those on there, it will take you exactly to those particular pieces of information that I want them to cover in that particular lab. And then they can go through those particular modules before they come into lab. If we click on one of those and go into one, let this boot up real quick. So this is pretty typical for the different types of muscle tissue, looking at skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. So if we scroll down through here, they basically are going through each of those major types. If we just click on something like cardiac muscle tissue here, it will take them to the histology of cardiac muscle. And at least in this particular case, what I've kind of liked to do is the annotation function over here. And it allows you to be able to draw as you discuss these particular frames. So as far as the static portion of what visible body has, it's set up very well as far as discussing the idea of cardiomyocytes, the idea that many of these cells have a branching pattern, intercalated discs, and then the nucleus of the cardiomyocytes. If I want to get in and say, okay, there is an intercalated disc that is labeled here, but you can also see them here, 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 and go through the diagram in that particular way. And at least on this particular photomicrograph, I do want to kind of call their attention to, if they look at this portion of the slide, they can actually see that there are striations present in cardiac muscle as well as present in skeletal muscle, and make that association as far as anatomy is concerned between both the skeletal and cardiac muscle. So pull that down. And look at a couple other things as far as how these things are set up. In the integumentary system, same type of thing. I have the introduction set up, and then moving through the different modules in the endocrine system to look at each of those systems as we go through the particular labs. All right. Let's look at a few other things that I've been doing within the coursework of anatomy and physiology too. Let's go in through a different direction, find the same type of thing. So a similar type of situation that they have an idea of exactly what they have to get done for that particular set of information. And then in this particular case, we're looking at the respiratory system and looking at anatomy. So I generally start off with visible body information and go through the anatomy, beginning with the nasal cavity and moving down through all the different structures within the respiratory system. So I'll turn this on just for a little bit of time and then kind of turn that off and give you more information as we go through this portion of the video.
Looking in from the lateral side, you can see that they're showing a...
So at least early in the structure, looking at the nasal conchae and looking at the meatus of the nasal cavity, as far as just an overall image is concerned, some of this structure is a little bit hard to identify. The thing that I really like about what's going on with visible body is I talk a little bit about these different paranasal sinuses. And then once I've mentioned them and given them an orientation of what's going on, I usually take those structures and just get them out of the way and hide them so that we can concentrate on other structures. So we went through and talked about the sphenoid sinus, ethmoid, frontal sinuses. Now those are beginning to go away. And now we have more of a view that's concentrated just on that portion of the nasal cavity, which we can identify the nasal conchae as well as the meatus. And as we move further into this video lecture for that point in time, move down and begin to look at the different areas of the pharynx, the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. And really, I work my way through all of the different anatomy of the lab throughout this particular video. So at this point now we're down in the laryngopharynx. I'll kind of let this run a little bit and then talk over it as we go. Go through structures as far as the hyoid bone, thyroid, and cricoid cartilage, and then the same type of thing. I can move those structures out of the way so that they can definitely see the true and the false vocal cords as well as the glottis in the center, and kind of move this up a little bit so you can start to see it. So now I'm starting to pull some of those structures away so that they can much more easily see the epiglottis, and then be able to remove or fade some of the structures so that they can easily see the different vocal folds as we look down and see the glottis. So true vocal cords, and then the vestibular folds above them with the glottis in the center. Let me kind of hold that for just a minute. Any questions about how things are set up or any other things that I can go into as far as showing you how I'm setting up the course overall? And although there's not a complete and true integration between visible body and Canvas, the same thing would be true of Blackboard. And what I'm really attempting to do are two things. One, really have a central location that students can get into the information and find it through whatever your course management system happens to be, and then be able to make sure that they can find all of the information in really more than one aspect. So they can either find the information clicking straight into visible body and going to the calendar form, or on the other hand, if I go through the individual information set, then they have a chance to look at any particular lab and go directly to that information and then begin to work within that particular series in visible body. As far as, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've got a question about the Canvas integration that you're doing. Is the link to visible body from Canvas done using an external link, an external URL or link, or embedded directly?
So if I edit this and go into that visible body, it is this URL link right here. And when you click on it, it asks you if you want to, originally it's going to ask you if you want to insert the link. But in this case, if we updated it, it would go directly to that particular page. And the same thing can be done for these individual units. Let me say this. Same thing there. That particular link, if we go to edit, is a URL. And all I'm doing as far as getting this set up is going to the pages within visible body that I want my students to see at that point in time, and then using a URL to link it in that particular spot.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I'm going to start unmuting some attendees so we can get some live questions going. So I'm going to go to, let's see, Leah. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so, oops, sorry about that. I unmuted the wrong person. Sorry, go ahead, Leah. You just need to unmute yourself on your end and you can ask your question.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious. First of all, thank you so much for doing these. They're super helpful. I was curious, when you were drawing on the cardiac muscle tissue, were you how are you doing that? Were you doing that on an iPad, or were you doing that with a mouse on your computer screen?
Can you see that pad?
Can you show it again? Sorry.
It's in the camera. It's in the upper right where the
Oh,
camera
I
is.
see. Okay, so like a tablet.
Yeah.
And then is that connected via a cord to your computer?
It is.
Okay.
And the reason I like to use this corded, it runs into a USB 3 port. I've used it on other USBs. When the connection speed through a USB 3 port is just about instantaneous. I've used them in the past that there's so much lag time that it makes it really difficult. But
Okay.
At least this summer running through a USB 3, it's worked out really well.
So when you have that showing, you have the visible body program up on your tablet and it's corded to your computer. And then when you're Zooming either here or with students or making a video for them, you just share your tablet screen.
That's exactly true. I mean,
Okay.
At least what I'm showing you right now is taped through Kaltura. So this is something that students have the ability to work on completely asynchronously. As far as where I'm heading in the actual labs, I guess just a little bit of background as far as where NKU will be working as far as fall. Our lab sessions are 2 hours apiece. We almost always fill all of our sections to 24 students. Social distancing won't allow 24 students in at a time, so I am having an A group come in for the first hour and a B group come in for the second hour of the lab. And I'll be able to annotate as students ask questions. I'll be able to pull up anything from visible body and annotate, but I'll also be recording it through Kaltura. So if students want to either work asynchronously or they were in the B group when I went over material in group A, although I'll cover the same material in both A and B group, I think it'd be nice for students to be able to go back and see what other questions students are asking. I can annotate just directly on those screens.
Got it. And
Any-
Kaltura is like it's like a screen catcher. Could you do the same on Zoom? Do you know?
Yep, you can do the same thing on Zoom.
Okay, so just record the Zoom, have it on. So we're in the same scenario. We're going to have about 12 with social distancing, with labs completed around 24.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, it's going to be an interesting fall. But we're just now we're adopting visible body. Now I also use Mastering A&P. I use Mary Ebenhoen for the lecture portion as well. And I'm sort of thinking that I'm going to end up planning for the fall to be online, and then whatever in-class stuff we get will be, I'll have to do enrichment, bonus, review, whatever with.
Actually, that reminds me of one other thing I want you to take a look at least where I'm headed as far as this is concerned. Let's see. So if we get into the course, if I open up some of these assignments, I'm not sure you can see that okay. Everything that's in green are those things that will be published on those particular dates. As I put this information together, there are definitely some assignments in there that I chose not to publish. And if we get that hour every week in a face-to-face setting, I may very well not use these assignments. But if it gets to a point that we are completely face-to-face, I've really embedded some of these additional assignments in that I can just turn them on and they're ready to go.
Got it. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Leah. All right, I am going to go over to Luis. Go ahead, Luis. You just have to unmute yourself on your end. Oh, go ahead. Sorry about that.
You get it?
Yep, here he comes.
Okay.
Luis, go ahead. I think you're all set. I think you're unmuted. I don't know.
On.
Oh, Luis, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Can you type it in chat?
Yes, yeah, I think he did type it in the chat, so I will, actually, I think his is in the Q&A. So he asked, are you teaching face-to-face over the summer, or is this fully online?
The entire university has been shut down the entire summer, so it is both lab and lecture section in a completely online asynchronous method. It's been a challenge, but Visible Bodies definitely helped a lot. At least how I've set up the summer, the videos that I've shown you, those things were taped well before those days where that information was covered in the course. And then I spend an amount of time in a synchronous method, making sure that they've seen the videos, make sure that if they have questions, I can go over them, and make sure I can pull up things in Visible Body that I can kind of reiterate what I was talking about in the original video.
Great, thank you. And then we've got a question from Guk. I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead, Guk. You just need to unmute yourself on your end and you can ask your question.
Hi, Robert. This is Guk here. Thanks for doing this.
Sure.
This is the first time that I'm using Visible Body, and we were originally going hybrid, but now we can't. So we're going online, and so I'm going to use this as a substitute for the lab. So you mentioned just now, so your lab actually is online, because I wasn't sure whether you are using Visible Body as a pre-lab before the actual lab or the lab itself.
In summer, it's completely online. In fall, we'll have students be able to attend lab for 1 hour out of a 2-hour session.
So it is synchronous. You are with them and they are doing the Visible Body lab.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it possible, say, if you have a class of 50, to split them into multiple groups, say groups of 10, 5 people each of them doing a different Visible Body labs?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Matter of fact, let me give you a little bit more background how we got to the point that we purchased Visible Body. I talked to somebody in our library resources. They were asking to put together a model repository that students could come to the library, check out the models, do the work on the models, and then return them and go home. I think the amount of access to those would be somewhat limited. I've actually looked at companies that make cadaver tables, which on one hand, they're excellent, but on the other hand, they're completely limited to only those number of students that you can get into the lab and only at that period of time. When I started looking at Visible Body, the fact that students could get in anytime they want, complete any assignment that you give to them, and then use it much more widely than any other those aspects that I talked about, absolutely the best way for us to go. And I think it's going to be even more essential as we're moving into more of an online setting.
Thank you. And second question is with regard to your Wacom tablet that you use. I use a similar setup, except that I use an iPad with an Apple Pencil that I could draw on it and I could actually show things. But the problem is that I can't link that to my computer. So I basically log in using my iPad. There seems to be a lag every time I do that. So you say that there's no lag. And the reason you manage to have that instantaneous is because you have a direct USB 3 link to your computer, which is your main portal.
That's
exactly
right. Yeah, that's what Leah had asked. And you know, to tell you the truth, I had been using that Wacom. I take it all over the place. I take it to the office on campus. I use it at home. I can plug it into a laptop, but I notice a very strong difference in running it through a USB 2 versus a USB 3. I've been very happy.
Usually share one screen and switch to the other, or do you do a screen extension?
As far as those videos that we were looking at earlier, I usually share my main screen, and then I load up on my second screen a number of things that I want to use in that video. Then I just start to pull them over and then move them back as I need them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Guk?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go over to Luis is back. So let me find Luis and unmute him. Go ahead, Luis.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. I started talking and then I realized you guys couldn't hear me.
We were ignoring you.
No.
But now
Oh,
I'll listen to you.
Well, thanks, Emily, for trying again, and thanks, Robert, for putting this on.
Of course.
It's very similar to what it sounds like a lot of us are going to be doing in the fall, what I'm going to be trying to do in the fall. And I'm splitting my labs into group A and B as well. And what I didn't catch from what you were discussing was for group A, you're going to do a in-person, that's your in-person group. I imagine you'll do a live demonstration. What you would have recorded for a fully online class, you'll do in person and also record. Is that right? And then
Let me modify that a little bit.
Okay.
So students would typically have 2 hours. And in a typical semester, they would come in, I would give them a face-to-face quiz, paper and pen. I would then do a pre-lab live and explain procedures. Then by the time I got to how they're going to work independently, we're almost an hour into the 2-hour lab at that point in time. So really what I've done with Visible Body is I've taken that information and I'm doing all my pre-lab material as that video. So they're responsible for watching that video before they come in. And then when they walk into the lab, I'm really expecting them to just kind of hit the ground running and have access to either wet lab methods, cadavers, or materials that Visible Body can approximate. But I will tell you what, the reason I pulled this skull up, I mean, I think everyone that's on this meeting today has a good idea if you're using those typical plastic skulls for them to learn bones of the skull. It's nowhere near this good as far as how well the sutures stand out. I know in my list of bones, I always have the vomer listed. It's darn near impossible for you to effectively show that bone to individuals with the plastic skulls. But as you start to move things away from the front portion of the skull in this particular case, it's very easy to get to the point that you can highlight the vomer and show the different aspects of it.
I think Visible Body is great. I'm actually using it right now for AMP2 section fully online. But in terms of how you're organizing, obviously this is going to be helpful for me for the fall, but back to like group A, you have doing some stuff before they come in. And what is group B doing on that first week in your setup?
So for instance, if my typical lab period is on Tuesday morning from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, Group A and Group B will watch that pre-lab video. Group A comes in from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. They leave. We furiously wipe everything down. And then Group B comes in from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock.
I see. Okay.
So they both see the same pre-lab. We just don't have enough room to do it any other way than to make sure that using Visible Body, we're in a good shape as far as they know what they have to get done when they walk in the door to lab. Is that explain it okay?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try a slightly different approach, but that makes total sense too. And yeah, thanks for answering that for me.
Any other questions, Luis?
Not at the moment, but if something pops up, I'll just raise my hand again. Thanks, Emily.
Okay, perfect. You're welcome. Thank you. All right, I am going to go over to Natalie. Hang on, Natalie, I'll unmute you. Nope, actually, I think Natalie might have dropped off. So I will go over to Professor Kareem. Let's see. Farzana, here we go. Go ahead, Farzana. I've just unmuted you, so you just need to unmute yourself on your end. You can ask your question.
Hi, and thanks for the presentation. My part is to teach physiology. So, I always have to give some review and refresh the anatomy at the beginning of each class, then get to the physiology. So I'm wondering, is this just for like labs? Because you showed us like an example earlier on. Is it just for looking at labs in physiology? I quite didn't get the physio part of it.
Okay, I'll tell you what I have in mind, then I'm going to ask Emily to help me.
Sure.
Okay, Emily, I'm going to, if it's okay, keep this screen up. I'm going to get into my presentation of the anatomy of the heart. And I know in one of the other office hours, I don't know if it was you or not, hopefully you can get to the same spot, that talked about cardiac cycle and how it works within the physiology aspect of visual body. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, I can definitely show that part.
I'll do my thing on my end, and then we'll kind of switch over to the other, if that's okay.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So I think, Farzana, what you're referring to is being able to do some anatomy review before you get into the physiology. So this is the lecture that I'm using on heart anatomy. The one after that is on cardiac physiology. Now, as I go through this, I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit so I can show you that I'm starting to pull some of these structures out of the way. I guess that's probably not a bad spot there. So what I've done is removed all of the ventricular wall structure and left the coronary vessels. So at least on the anatomy portion, I'm concentrating on the idea of when the aortic semilunar valve closes and the blood kind of drops down based upon gravitational pull here, it seeps through these coronary arteries and feeds oxygenated blood to the ventricles. On top of that, I think where you are headed is the idea of as the electrical impulses move through the ventricles and then the ventricles depolarize and contract, they're actually compressing these cardiac vessels and at least for short periods of time, not allowing as much blood to go into the ventricular walls. So that's where I am as far as the anatomy is concerned. Emily, how are you as far as jumping over to that cardiac cycle?
I can definitely do that. Let me see if I can share my screen. You just need to stop sharing yours and I can show the cardiac cycle. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so here we go. So there are a couple of, actually, hang on one second. I just gotta clear some windows out of the way here.
I have the same problem.
Yeah, there are, well, two content sources that I want to show you that contain the physiology content. So where I am right here, this is the My Apps page of Visible Body courseware. This is the welcome page, just to give you a point of reference. Whenever you log into your Visible Body courseware instructor account, you will land on this page. It's the welcome page. And, again, just, I know it's a lot of content and adopting a new technology is overwhelming, but we are here to help you. One of the best ways, just a little preamble, to start with Visible Body is to use one of our courses that's already built for you. So if you're using the Tortora book, we have textbook correlations to pretty much every anatomy and physiology textbook on the market. So what that is basically we've taken all the 3D content and put it in the same order of the textbook. So, that's the best way to start. So that's just point A. And then point B, to show you exactly where the content is, I'm going to go into our physiology and pathology app. Just close some of these windows here. And so this is our newest app, and this has a beating heart. So it focuses on physiology and pathology, so disease states and models of those disease states. And I think, Robert, is this what you were thinking of?
Yeah, I just couldn't tell from watching the video whether you had presented it or it was someone else, but it's definitely this video.
Okay, great. So this is our cardiac cycle. And what this is, it walks students through the cardiac cycle. So there's a lesson over here. So you could create an assignment with this beating heart. You can interact with the beating heart just like you do any of the models. I'm using my mouse to click and drag. There's a joystick here where you can move the model. That helps, especially for students on trackpads. But I want to point you to this area here, down on the bottom left of the screen. You're able to change aspects of the model. So you can increase the beats per minute. You can always pause it. You can add and remove blood flow, add and remove conduction. There's the sound, and then EKG. And then the beauty too is, this work is already done for you. So you could, again, just send the students here. You can ask them to make sure they accomplish and learn certain learning objectives, maybe as they're working through this content, just like you would, assign a chapter in a textbook, which we all know students don't read covered. They'd never read a chapter from the beginning to the end, right? They want the visual introduction first. So the bottom line, you can assign this whole lesson, and the student will click through, and they're going to get this bite-sized information right here that's going to walk them through the aspects of the cardiac cycle.
Emily, you make a great point as far as the detail of that. I would use that in a live lecture. And one, to kind of get orientated to what that looks like and what it can do by you demonstrating it. And then once you're finished with it, you can kind of pass that assignment on to them and say, okay, you've seen all this in lecture. Now apply it on your own within this assignment. Yeah. I really like that.
Great, thank you. And so that's one aspect. I mean, there's a lot of content here in the PathoPhys app, and there are some nice models of pathologies. And again, it's consistent with all of the other visible body apps. So once you learn how to manipulate the models, which is pretty easy, it's the same user experience throughout all of visible body. So, click on a structure, you're going to get a definition. You can rotate, zoom in, zoom out. So there's good content there. Definitely play around with this app. And then the other spot I was going to suggest is our anatomy and physiology app. And this is really, a lot of our courses use chapters from this app as the beginning part of the assignment, or really the meat of the assignment. And the reason is, as you can see, this has a different look and feel. This content's already laid out for you. So it's 12 units, 50 chapters. So if we were looking at the circulatory system, you could assign this whole chapter 29 on the heart, and it will include physiology animations and 3D models, as well as histology. And all you would need to do, and we've actually done the work for you if you use one of our courses, you just assign chapter 29 if you want the students to learn about the heart. They would watch an animation. I'm going to play a different one for you. But then they come here and learn about the anatomy, but it's going to be a mix of assets, anatomy and physiology. So I'll just go back here and scroll through. You can see anatomy, and then here's, let's go to this one on heart valves.
The 4 heart valves control the flow of blood through the heart by opening and closing the heart chambers in a coordinated sequence. The 2 valves located between the atria and the ventricles are called the tricuspid and mitral valves. These valves facilitate the flow of blood as it moves into the ventricles from the atria. The other 2 valves are the aortic and pulmonary semilunar valves. These valves prevent the backflow of blood into the segment it just exited. Each of the four
So I'll pause it there, but you get the idea. They're all pretty brief. They're anywhere between 30 and 90 seconds. And actually one thing that a lot of professors do if they're, teaching, whether in a class or online, is they just turn off the sound. You can just mute the sound. And you can do your own lecturing, and you can pause this. You can let it play in the background without sound, just like this. You can turn the closed captioning off, and you can lecture behind this as well. And these are all, we have over 100 physiology animations.
Wow.
So, and they're on all sorts of topics. So that's the heart chapter, but there are some excellent animations on in the muscular system, like skeletal muscle function, muscle contraction, action potential. And again, you could play this, just turn the sound off, and you could be lecturing over these beautiful animations.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could assign them, have the students watch them as part of their, homework or pre-lab or post-lab assignment.
Wonderful.
Okay. I'm going to stop. Any questions about what I've shown?
That was really nice. Nice to see all those. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I encourage you, if you don't have an instructor account to courseware, please request one. You can contact me, fill out any form on our website. We'll get that right to you. And, if you just want to explore, just come to the My Apps page and open these apps. They're web apps, so they open in a web browser. And then you can also download the mobile apps here to a mobile device. Those are actually great because you can, sit on the couch and just kind of play around with them.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, great. Well, thank you for asking. All right, I am going to go over to Nicole. Let me find you, Nicole, so I can unmute you. Oh, wait, did I already look for Nicole? Nope. Sorry about that. I think Nicole might have dropped off. Let's see. Craig. Craig Gillum had a question. So go ahead, Craig. You can just unmute yourself.
Okay. I was curious to see what you have available for a gross anatomy course.
Sure. So are you using a particular textbook?
Yes. Well, I'm using Moore's Clinically Oriented Anatomy, and then Grant's Dissector.
Okay, great. Hang on one second. Let me just move this window out of my way. So I think that both of those are listed as one of our pre-made courses. And this is, so if you, I'll back up there just for a second. Within your courseware instructor account, you just go to pre-made courses, and that will take you here. And yours would be Anatomy Lab. So here we've got Grants. And I'm pretty sure if we don't have more here, I know we have it in another location. We just, we can't publish all of them because I think we have about 150 courses right now. There we go. Is this the book that you use?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. No, that correlation is not part of its title. He publishes something that's for, kind of a professional level, and another that's a student level, and we use the professional level.
Use the professional.
But that term correlation is not in the title.
Oh yeah, that's our.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it'd just be, this is the book title here, Clinically Oriented Anatomy, and then correlation is just the. Yep. So what I would do is just add this to my account.
Okay.
And just hit save. And then see right here, it is creating the course. It just takes a minute. That's done. And then I can go in, and here are the assignments already done. So, here's the back. And you click in, and here's the assignment. And it's going to, this one is going to link out to anatomy and physiology. So yeah, so all of the content is correlated to that textbook. And yes, it is, the content's very thorough and comprehensive. That said, you do have the ability to kind of set the level. So visible body courseware is used at a pretty wide range of institutions, you know, from community colleges all the way up to Harvard Medical School. So the content is, it's very medically accurate and comprehensive. And so you can see within all of these folders, those assignment folders, there is a lot of content here.
Right.
You can see. So we could send, if you, do you have a visible body courseware account?
No.
Okay, so we could definitely, I'm just going to make a note to, would you like one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So we will send one to you and direct you to this, this course here.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Not from me.
All right. Thanks for asking one. All right, so hang on one second. Let me come back to my chat here. Let's see. Oh, actually, we've got several in the Q&A.
Okay.
Let's see. So Esther's asking if you could show an example of one of the assignments you've developed. So I will stop sharing, Robert, if you could talk about or show an assignment that you've created.
Sure.
Thank you.
So let's look at a couple things as far as kind of piggyback on what Emily had been saying. These two courses are the courses that I've been working with. If we go to the course that I'm currently developing for fall, you really notice that I have a number of different correlations that I've already pulled those as a pre-made course over. And then I've gone through each of those lab manual correlations and then began to adapt them individually for this particular course that's coming up. So if we open up that course, there are two different ways that students will be able to look at this. At least how I set this up, these exercises are not things that I've done from scratch. They really are modifications of things that Visible Body has already done for you and then just pulled into each of those exercises. So when my students get in, this is what I'll be asking them to do. So if they go to information set 1, and if we pull up that tissues lab that we had earlier, here's their pre-lab assignment. That muscle tissue that we looked at, the nervous tissue, and we'll open up the integumentary system and look at that. So they're going through an introduction and then through the system itself. If I go back a frame, you can see that after they complete their lab, I'm going to ask them to complete the practice quiz and the graded quiz on each of those things that are above. So if I click on integumentary system again, it's going to move into locations. This actually is the muscular portion that they're actually going to take a dissection quiz that I asked them to get into. And rather than putting up a muscle and asking students to identify the muscle, this quiz will give them a muscle name and expect them to go through and find it and label it. So that's how I set up the assignments within that particular section of the lab. So they would take this quiz right before they come into lab the week after they finish that particular set of information. And then I follow that up with giving an online quiz that I take for an actual grade or assessment. Does that help? So we can open it up. So it says select the left or the right triceps brachii. And the students will then go through and select and then submit. And they'll go through and identify these muscles really in a different way than they could do on almost any other quiz material. And in this particular case, we're asking them for a muscle. They have to find it within the quiz itself.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, these are very unique quizzes. We're the only virtual anatomy, really any anatomy platform that has this type of assessment where the students are actually working with a live model and dissecting. And, you know, you can, again, you've got a lot of customization ability with visible body courseware. And it's so if you really want to create your own questions, you can absolutely do that. So sometimes professors write questions like, you know, select the muscle that does this, you know, getting into more critical thinking type questions. But just know that you have a lot of control and ability to really make this platform your own with our models.
Emily, you bring up a good point. Actually, it's asking for the left or the right adductor magnus. And I know within the Merriam text, they actually label the adductor magnus in this anterior view. And really the only thing you can see in that anterior view is just a tiny sliver as it sits next to the sartorius. In this particular quiz, and at least the way I teach it, students could then just rotate this thing around to the opposite side where they can see more of the adductor magnus and then label it in a view that's more comfortable to them, or how they learned it, however you want to put that, which I really like.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to go, got several questions. Let's see. Hang on one second, I'm just scrolling to see who. Okay, so we've got a question from Ted. He's asking, how are the lectures integrated, or is visible body instead of a virtual lecture? Or I think he's asking, are you using visible body instead of a virtual lecture?
That's exactly what I'm doing. I am logging into visual body. I'm turning on the lecture capture, in this case, Kaltura, and I'm giving that video lecture while using information within visible body.
Perfect. All right, so let's see. Any other questions? I think we've gotten through most. So if anybody has any more questions, I think the easiest thing to do is just raise your hand. I'm just going to check. I've got 3 different windows open. I think Nicole is back, so I'm going to go to Nicole. Go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you. I was actually here the whole time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No worries at all. But thank you so much. You both have done a great job, Robert and Emily, in demonstrating many great things. I have 2 very unrelated questions. One is the quick one. If you're using Desire to Learn and the students are purchasing their own subscriptions, you know, via the link that I send out, can I put in Desire to Learn let's say I have an assignment that says visible body and include the link that I'm trying to send them to within visible body, and then they would log in each time, or it would automatically log in once they have paid for their subscription, or would that not work?
Yes, it would work. So they definitely, you could link directly to the particular assignment in visible body courseware. So you could make a web assignment and take that link. I can show you, or Robert, do you want to show exactly where in courseware they can grab that link?
Yeah, let me kind of give you an orientation of where we are. So I assume Desire to Learn works in a similar way. I actually typed this out in Word, and then I took it and dropped it right into an editing frame within Canvas. And then I go to edit. I assume Desire to Learn is similar. I highlight, in that case, muscle tissue. I go to the button that says, okay, I want to link to a particular URL.
Right.
When I open that up, I'm going to put that web page in that text box and hit insert link. But in this case, it's going to be update because I've already put it in once. At least in Canvas, it then puts it into a blue font with an underline to indicate that it's a hyperlink. So when I click on, let me save it so it activates it. So when I click on nervous tissue, it's going to go to that exact portion within my course that I want them to see at that particular time. I mean, most of my 209 students are first year, first semester college students. So getting them to do a lot of stuff online is sometimes a challenge. while it does take a little bit of time, I've really kind of pared it down a pretty good amount. Just by, if you're going to type it out in a Word document anyway, or you're going to give them a set of information, this highlight and hit insert link actually goes very quickly.
Now that's awesome. I think that will work so well compared to what I was doing in the past. And D2L does look very, very similar. So are your students purchasing this subscription the way I described, like the $50 subscription, just like we do it, or?
Okay, back to that background a little bit. That discussion that I had with the lead librarian about having the model repository.
Right.
I don't know how many universities have something like that, but they have an amount of money set aside for that. After meeting with her and explaining to her that so many more students can use Visible Body if you give them access to it 24/7, then could get into the library and look at those models. We have a, you might have to give me the terminology, Emily, but it is university-wide.
Yep,
So
it's a site license, exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we work with a lot of libraries. Yeah, library, that's a great source and a great point that, you know, those plastic models are expensive and they live in the library, so.
Right.
And one of them doesn't do you a ton of good.
True. Okay, and the other question, completely not related, but I noticed on your muscle tab that you had an augmented reality muscle actions. It was a draft. Is that, could you show me that real quick? Is that something you put together, or is that linking to something into?
No, that's something that Visible Bodies put together. I think Emily probably has access to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I could definitely go to that assignment. So, and I could show you AR, and I apologize, I don't have my iPad in front of me, but I could definitely show the assignment inside of coursework and you'll get the idea. So, Robert, I just need you to stop sharing your screen again.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Okay, so we are inside of courseware. Let's see. I'm pretty sure it's in most of our courses. Let's try, actually, yeah, let's try Tortora. So again, I'm just going into a textbook correlation. This is the assignment path, and this is similar. So this is just a little point of reference. This is another way the students can get into the assignment. It's either this or the calendar view. It leads them to the same spot. So here's one of the augmented reality assignments. And these are great to do with students because they all have mobile devices. That's where the augmented reality function works. So this is a video that was recorded, you know, with the mobile device in using the augmented reality function. So they've, you know, we've got this model, and then she's got somebody in, you know, next to her doing the same muscle action. So it's a nice activity to get students to do, but this model is in the same room, you know, but you can see it viewing it through the phone, and they're just recording it, and that's how it's able to be viewed here. So yeah, so you could create an assignment there. Let's see, let's go back here. There are a few more. There are also some nice augmented reality lab activities that you could use. Here's upper limb. Similar, and it's, again, it's nice, you know, similar to, you know, the anatomage table, which, you know, it's very nice, but it lives in the lab and it's limited to students. Visible Body is a one-to-one solution, so every student is going to get AR, and it's going to live on the devices that they already own. It works on iPhones, iPads, and Android phones and tablets. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Robert's got his up.
Yeah, so that sits on my home screen of this is an Android, and you open up very quickly and get to it, and they will show those motions that way.
Yep. Great. Any other questions, Nicole?
No, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we've got, it's 5:06. I'm happy to keep going. We've got some more questions if others would like to stay.
Yep, that's fine with me.
Great. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I've got a question about cheating. So I'm going to look see if Sunny is still here. I don't see him, but I'll ask the question. It's, how do you try to quell cheating on the quizzes and practicals?
Is that to me?
Yes.
Okay. Within visible body, I don't. I really accept visible body for being more of a learning tool, not an assessment tool. And the way that I actually get around that is, I had mentioned earlier that the practice quiz and the graded quiz are due the day before they come into the lab the following week. So I have a separate assessment that can either be done face-to-face or can be done with use of something like Respondus, and take an assessment that they're less likely to get help on. Let's put it that way.
Great, thank you. And then we've got another question from Guck. Is the dissection quiz pre-made or can it be edited?
I would say both. Would you agree with that, Emily?
Yes, yep, it's all of the above. Yeah, you can really, you know, we've got many pre-built dissection quizzes, but you also can create your own, and I'll just show that very briefly. Let's see. So here I'm in a course. If I go to the quiz, actually I would go to, sorry about that, I'd go to the question bank and I can create a new question. So this is actually going another level deeper. So I can, yes, I can create my own quizzes. So I can do, I can take all the visible body questions and make my own quiz, but I can also make my own questions and make my own 100% quizzes written by me, or I can mix these questions written by me with the visible body questions. So I'll show you right now quickly how to create your own dissection question, for example. And you can see everything is guided for you. So it really is an easy to use platform. So you would write your prompt or whatever you want, you know, select the muscle that does X, Y, Z. And here is a library of models. So again, just like the rest of the platform, you can filter down by body system, and you know, select whatever model you want. Pretty soon, sometime this fall, you will have even more models in here, including the gross anatomy lab model. So, you know, we've had the request from a lot of professors to provide fully built up models. So like as a whole human being, so to speak, in the libraries to choose for questions, so that, you know, you can have students working with, you know, a full body and now go find it, versus, you know, a little bit easier, you're going to give them a view that has, you know, a few structures. It's a little bit easier to find. So you're going to have some more functionality there. And then in step 3, I will type, you know, what the correct answer is. And then here you have the ability to select what you want the system to correct as correct answers, accept, I should say, as correct answers. So, you know, again, you're going to create this, but then it's auto graded and it's going to live in your library of, you know, authored quizzes. So questions. So you do have a lot of capability to, you know, really make this your own.
I think, Emily, probably 2 things on that. I mean, the quizzes are extremely thorough. I usually wind up taking questions out of the quiz and really adding more. I mean, I guess, you know, a pretty good example would be like on blood vessels. Models just do not show both the internal and external jugular veins very well. So we tend to only ask the external jugular, but with being able to move structures out of the way in visible body, both of those veins are easily accessible within the software. So those would be probably 2 questions that could stay when it doesn't necessarily happen that way when you're looking at just a model.
Right. Yeah. So you do. You can take any of these quizzes and edit them very easily.
The quizzes that I have, my students are allowed 2 attempts to get the highest score that they can on those quizzes. So I really am designing them for them to make some mistakes the first time they take it, correct the mistakes, and ideally get a relatively high score. The nice thing about it is you can then log in and check the scores on all those quizzes. And if you're having an individual discussion with a student that they just can't figure out why they didn't do very well on their exam, and they're not doing very well on those visible body quizzes, well, then you have a discussion that you can start about, well, you're not doing the work on the front end, so it's awfully difficult to expect to be successful when you're not working within this platform.
Great. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second and just check the chat. And again, if anybody has questions and I haven't gotten to you, just raise your hand. Let's see. I think we are all set. I think we, oh, hang on, we've got one more. Nope, just a thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much for attending. Yes. So let's see. I'm just going to look at the Q&A. Okay, so I've got kind of another question. Any dissection quiz for cadavers? Like, we do have the gross anatomy lab, which has, it's a virtual model simulating a cadaver, but it's a virtual model. So we will have quizzes on that, I think in October, but we do not have quizzes on actual, cadaver images right now. All right, so, and then I think John B had a question. Hold on, let me, here. Hold on one second, I think it's in the chat. Let me just scroll down here. Okay, John Buckley, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question.
Oh, actually, I think that it pretty much got covered with the talk about assessments. So,
great.
It's the how to do lab practicals and other such using visible body is sort of where I'm kind of looking to see about whether I can use it or not.
Hey, John, do you have students coming in face-to-face at all?
They're talking about it at the beginning, but since, the middle of last semester kind of got cut off, I'm looking to have an option, but I really like visible bodies, look, because yeah, you're right all about the plastic models just do not. I mean, I teach mortuary science students, so they don't, half of them aren't scientists and, they're not going to be doing any physiology. So it's all anatomy structure for them. So they have to get through, embalming practicals.
I think I would tell you two things. One, I think I would use these quizzes and exams within visible body. And as long as your students are coming in face-to-face, have them log in and take the quiz or the exam as they're sitting there with you. And that really takes care of a lot of ills. Because you can see what they're doing on the screen and you know whether or not they're getting into any other screen.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. All right, thank you.
Now, when they go away from face-to-face, then you'll have another challenge, but at least you'll get started that way.
We've got responders too, so we can work out something.
There are definitely limitations to responders too. I mean,
yes.
If they want to cheat, they're going to. That's all there is to it. Mm-hmm.
So great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any last questions before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Robert. This has been wonderful. We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Glad to do it.
Thank you so much. And for all the attendees, I've put my email in the chat. Feel free to email me any questions. Feel free to fill out any form on our website. We are super responsive. We'll get right back to you.
And as far as the attendees, if you have questions that you think I can help you with, shoot an email to Emily, and she does have my contact information. Be happy to talk with you if you'd like to.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, have a wonderful evening, everyone. And thank you again, Robert, for your time and expertise today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.